I've done all of Brighton.
Oh my god, the title of this film is so sexist. Hello there, you loose units, and welcome back to another episode of Spicy Boy Reviews. I'm, of course, your host, Andrew Iles. Hope you've been looking after yourselves, looking after each other, pulling your head in, and all that jazz. Welcome back. Today we are going to review an action film, a Jason Statham film, if you were. Either you're a fan or you're not. Either way, we're going to get straight into it, and we're not here to fuck spiders. Today's film is Wrath of Man. Jason Statham plays, well, Jason Statham, new security guard for a cash truck who surprises his co-workers when he unleashes deadly covert skills during a heist. The crew is left wondering who he is and where he came from. Soon, the marksman's ultimate motive becomes clear as he takes dramatic steps to settle a score. Don't fear the Reaper, fear the Wrath of Man. And that was the synopsis for Wrath of Man. There you go. It was directed by Guy Ritchie, who needs no introduction at all. We last saw his latest film in 2019, The Gentleman, which was pretty good. It was a cast of all-stars as usual. And he's a bloody workhorse, good old Ritchie. He's just churning them out, all of his films, and they're usually pretty bloody solid. This will be his fourth collaboration with Jason Statham, and of course here Jason Statham is playing a Jason Statham character. He's icy, uber cool, and brutal. He grunts, he huffs, and he kills. Straight out of the gate, I'm going to admit, I'm not a huge Jason Statham fan. I know he's the modern action star, along with The Rock, and stuff like that, but like I've never been a huge fan of him per se. I love The Rock, but not a big fan of him. He's definitely got a following. He usually delivers a pretty solid performance, but again, he's pretty much playing Jason Statham. He's one of those movie stars where if you've seen one of his films, you've pretty much seen the majority of them. You know the fare that we're getting into with these kind of films. Although I have to admit, his best work has been with Guy Ritchie. I didn't realise until I saw it in the credits of the opening of this film that this is actually a remake. The film came out in 2004, a French film called Cash Truck. And after watching this film, it makes a whole lot of sense that this is a remake. Foreign films are structured very much differently from Western films. They're not super nice or polished. They don't always have a happy ending. And they're structured very, very differently. And they're not afraid to go off the rails on conventional storytelling, which I kind of like. I mean, just look at Parasite, the Oscar winner from a couple of years back. It was structured very differently. We didn't know where it was going to go, but it was fucking engaging because of that. And same with this film. And then there's Hollywood remakes of foreign films, and they're sort of, I guess, cult hits, but again, structured very differently. I mean, just look at Oldboy, for instance. It was structured very differently, a remake of a foreign film. And that's what actually engaged me about this film. I didn't know where the hell it was going to go, and that was the cool part about it. It wasn't super predictable, and there were a few twists and turns that kept me engaged the whole run time of the film. I have to say, though, I didn't like any of the characters. Just going to call it out. I didn't like any of them. Everyone was played off as super too cool for school, baddest of the arseless douchebags, okay? The first half of the film's dialogue was super fucking manly, like uber macho, to the point of fucking annoyance, I'll be honest with you. Just the testosterone was oozing off the screen. I was half expecting in the locker room a fucking wedgie to take place. It's like we were looking into like a private schoolboy's locker room or something. And you got to the feeling with all the douchebaggery and the blokiness. It's like, are we watching a bunch of Marines who are getting ready to go on a suicide mission? Or are we watching a bunch of security guards who are picking up and delivering money? Fucked if I know. The film also comes across as very mean-spirited. That's probably due to the fact that it was a retelling of a French film, because again, it's non-conventional here. But there was no really redeemable characters. I suppose we kind of sympathise, to say the least, with Jason Statham, because, spoiler alert, even though it's in the trailer, his son gets murdered on a botched heist, and the whole film is a revenge flick, I suppose. But even then, I wasn't really super on his side, because we do a bit of time jumping here and we find out in his past, again, trying to avoid spoilers here, Jason Statham is not a super likable character even before the instigating event of his son being murdered. So there was no one really to root for here. The action is very brutal yet humorless. Now, it doesn't have to be a fucking Marvel film where as soon as there's a death or an action scene, there has to be a quip or a one line. Not at all. But there needed to be some like relief of tension throughout the film, because the violence is pretty brutal, I'll be honest with you. And yeah, it just felt like there was no sort of release of tension there. I mean, the best movies to do that, I suppose, are like I reviewed Nobody or John Wick films, where it's not like necessarily laugh out loud humor after, you know, a really tense, brutal scene, but something to like, oh, okay, like we can relieve ourselves. And the whole film felt a bit icky and turned my stomach a few times, just with some of the subject matter and like the violence, to be honest with you. And like that's saying something for me, because I usually love brutal violence in films, but it was a bit of just like, oh, okay, everyone's a piece of shit and they're all hurting each other. Okay, I have no one to root for. The film is split up into chapters. We get, I think, if memory serves, mainly 3 chapters, kind of 3 setups and outcomes for the instigating event, which is the botched heist and the murder of Jason Statham's son. And we kind of follow 3 groups almost in this film, which was pretty engaging. And the film also really, talking about the chapters, the film shifted dramatically at one point at the halfway mark, which, again, it knocked me for 6, and I was like, okay, I'm really engaged now. It started out as a super bro, douchebaggy, macho action film, and then the halfway point hit, and then it became a gangster heist film. I get really strong vibes of Heat here. There's no doubt that that was a massive influence on this film, and it's almost become a subgenre in itself, like, probably because it's the most duplicated heist genre / film of all time, because Heat is a fucking perfect film, and a lot of people and filmmakers are using it as inspiration, and that's definitely felt here. Not a criticism, I'm a big Heat fan, and when I see inspiration of Heat here, I'm like, cool, fucking I'm on board. Kind of like as the Joker was, or Joker the film, was inspired by Taxi Driver. The same thing, not a criticism, it's just like, cool, I see it, yeah, I'm on board, but just something I noticed. The film was never boring. I'll say that. It was engaging, it kept my curiosity the entire film, and that's a plus. I think that has something to do with that it's a remake of a foreign film, maybe, because, as again, foreign films don't usually stick to a Western structure at all. And yeah, the film was never boring. Thumbs up for that. I have to admit, though, the score was fucking epic. It was almost superhero-like. It felt like something maybe Nolan could have put in one of his films. It kept the tension throughout the film. It heightened everything. It was very engaging. Composed by Christopher Benstead, I believe that's how you pronounce it. Very cool, awesome score. Probably the best part of the film, to be honest. There's also a couple of single-take shots throughout the film that puts the audience into a POV scenario of like a fly on the wall, I suppose. And they went on for a fair few minutes. Yeah, just something I noticed that was quite cool. I really appreciate when I notice that it's a legit single-take shot. I'm like, oh, cool, well done. Now, this film is what I call a dad film, okay? Everyone's dad is going to come home after a hard day's work, sit in the living room, sit in their favourite chair, pour themselves a glass of whiskey or a beer, and sit there and watch some bank heist argy-bargy. Our protagonist kicks serious ass, he grufts, there's no humour. We're not here to have some silly jokey joke, we want to see some fucking violence. This is a man's film. That kind of genre. Yeah, this is definitely a manly man film. Killings, twists and turns, brutal violence, badassery, dads will fucking froth this. Like I said before, it was never boring, it was super engaging the whole time, and especially at the halfway mark when the film sort of shifted, awesome. I did like that. It does jump around time-wise, so it goes like 5 months later, 6 months later, and then goes 3 weeks ago, and you're like, fucking, hang on, wait a minute, whereabouts are we in the timeline? That could seem a bit annoying to some people, but the film's made well enough that you can kind of catch on to what's going on and stuff. The acting is good, although, again, no characters I really rooted for, except for maybe the new characters that were introduced halfway through the film. They were pretty engaging, I guess. But, yeah, so there's a bit of jumping around time-wise, but not super distracting for me, but some other people might take, you know, that might grind their gears somewhat. Does it go up there with one of Guy Ritchie's best films ever? I don't know, maybe not. It's definitely his most original, but again, that's probably, the credit has to probably go to Cash Truck, the French film released in 2004, and the structure of that film being wholeheartedly original. Is it a good film? Yes, it is. It's very, very well made. Didn't love the characters, but whatever. I kind of got the vibes of like that movie Fury, where no one was really fucking likable at all, except their protagonist in that film. And it sort of shows that it takes animals to win a war, or the brutality of war or something. Kind of similar vibes here, even though they're cash truck security guards, they're not fucking Marines or anything. But it's like, they're a bunch of assholes who has to deal with asshole behaviour on a daily basis. I guess. I know, I'm fucking digging there. But hey, the film was original, it kept me engaged, was never boring. So yeah, I have to give that a recommendation. Again, it's a fucking dad film. For those of you who know, like, the vibe I'm going for there, that's the kind of film it was. Very blokey, not everyone's going to like it, but hey, it's worth a watch, especially if you like Guy Ritchie films, and especially if you're a Jason Statham fan. Anyway, guys, that's my review of Wrath of Man. Go see it if you wish. Write down below what your favourite Jason Statham film is. He's got a shit ton out there. And if you could, please give this episode a like. I love to see your love and support. And along those lines of love and support, please subscribe. This channel only exists with your, again, love and support. So thank you for that. And I'll see you next episode. And as always, stay spooky, kids.